Hi, and welcome to Classic Advice. My name is Scarlett Classic. I am your host. This is my podcast all about my advice that I'd like to share with you. I also have co hosts on, and they bring their own unique experience and expertise to the show, which is awesome. So I'm so happy that you decided to join, and let's dive right into the episode. I have a really special surprise for you because I have Jenny with me. And we're going to be talking all about relationship stuff, divorce. We might talk on friendships and all that fun stuff. I'm really, really excited for our conversation, Jenny.
Me too.
And introduce yourself to the listeners. Who are you? What do you do?
Okay, well, my name is Jenny Alexander, and I'm currently living in Ontario. And I'm a writer, author. I've written a bunch of books, mostly dealing with relationships of one kind or another. And before that, I was actually an administrative assistant type of person for like 25 years. And so I had a huge life change in my 50s. So, yeah, that's me in a nutshell, I guess.
Wow. Yes, I'm looking at your website right now, and from what I see, there's 6 books on here. That's all of your books, right?
Yep.
And they
Yep.
all look so intriguing. And I'm such an avid reader. I'm very excited to
Oh,
explore
good.
that.
Good.
So something that we had talked about just previously to hitting record was we both have the, I don't know if the trauma of divorce is the right way to word it, but
Think
for
you're
me it
good.
was very traumatic for me.
Yes. Yep.
And tell me a little bit about like what you say that you have effective strategies for healing after
Mhm.
divorce. Like what
Mhm.
do you want to expand on that a little bit?
Yeah. Like one of the most important things is like don't go through your recovery alone, which is I mean, I had friends, in quote friends, and I had family, of course, and my parents were amazing and I had a good church. Um, so I wasn't necessarily alone, but I also wasn't necessarily completely open about how I was really handling it. And so when I came to a point where I just, a breaking point or a turning point, I guess you could say, I actually had to tell someone that I was really, really struggling. And that's when I really found this the kind of support that I needed through it, some ladies at church. And then I went to divorce care, and divorce care was a real turning point for me, even though I had been in counseling during, you know, from before my divorce to, through the recovery. It was having that support where others really understood what I was going through that made a big difference.
Oh, 100%. I think
Hmm.
that's I think that's really vital. And I speaking from someone that didn't really have that,
Oh, okay.
I could see that that would really, really help. Like I had it in the sense that I did go to counseling,
Hmm.
but I guess you could say that I was raised in the way that marriage is for life.
Yeah.
And no one really understood the reasons why I was getting
Hmm.
divorced. And I didn't go into depth about it with really anyone other than a couple people that were very, very close to me. Like I
Hmm.
told my parents why.
Hmm.
But that was really kind of it.
Hmm.
Because I figured it wasn't anybody's business the why, and it was
Right.
between me and my ex. I I didn't think that it was something like, well, I guess because I've seen a lot of, I guess I haven't seen a lot, is exaggerating, but I've seen it where people will go through a divorce and then all their friends have to pick sides.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to do that. And I guess we
Right.
were kind of unique in the sense that he's Romanian and we lived abroad in Romania for
Oh,
many,
wow.
many, many years. I lived there for 5 years with him. And when we came back, or I came back to Canada, he came to
Hmm.
Canada for the first time. It was shortly after he came to Canada that we got a divorce. And
Mhm.
so not a lot of people knew him. And it was like, I'm not gonna say things that because I have my people here, because this is where I was raised,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna go around and tell people, oh yeah, like why would I do that? Like I don't gain anything from it. He's definitely not gonna gain anything from it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I just kept my mouth shut. But I guess in that sense it was I just carried it alone.
Yeah.
And it was I fell into a depression, a really deep depression
Mm.
afterwards and feeling really hopeless.
Yeah.
And after that I had a hard time because just I guess the way that I was a very big people pleaser. So I was so eager to make sure that everybody else was happy that I didn't look after myself.
Yeah.
And then the people around me ended up being people that took advantage of me,
Right.
which was quite toxic.
Hmm. Yeah.
And yeah, so I noticed you had a book about toxicity.
Yes. And that was geared more towards like friendships, but really it could apply, like it was, yeah, it was written on the basis of friendships, but it could really apply to any kind of relationship.
Hmm.
Like I talk about what a good relationship is. I talk about that's how I start because I don't want to start all negative, right? So I
Right,
start
yeah.
like, well, this is what a good relationship is. And it's been a while since I looked at that book actually.
Mhm.
Uh but and then I talk about traits of toxicity. Um and sometimes you're in a relationship with someone for years and years and years, and maybe there's some underlying struggles or tension, but you're not really, you can't pinpoint it. But then after something like divorce, like for me, my self-respect actually grew after divorce because I'm the one that left the relationship. He was cheating, like, and cheating and cheating, and he wasn't changing. And so finally I just said, I can't do this anymore. And
Yeah.
I left. And there's something almost empower. It wasn't easy. It was the hardest decision I ever made because, like you, I didn't want to be divorced. Like, no. But, there was something very empowering about that at the same time. And it was, about a year after my divorce that I started to realize that the friendships that I had had since I was like a child weren't really that good for me. But I didn't make any drastic changes at that time. Actually, I did in one relationship, but the others I kept until about 5 years later. Then I really realized, why am I still hanging around people? I'm not enjoying their company. We have nothing in common. We just have a history. That does not make a relationship. And I realized I had again, I realized I had a choice and I made it. And it was very, again, just like divorce, it was very kind of isolating and confusing. It's like, did I do the right thing? I always thought these people
Mhm.
would be in my life. And that's why I wrote that book, because it was a very strange time. Like ending those relationships and ending the divorce were some of the hardest decisions I ever made. So, and I didn't, people were just didn't talk about that very much. And so I wrote a book about it because thinking, well, maybe someone else is going through that, and that will help clarify. Like I call it a relationship evaluation guide. It kind of helps you see good versus bad, or healthy versus unhealthy. That might be a better way to say it.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I had, oh, until my therapist pointed it out to me,
Mhm.
I didn't even realize it. I didn't realize what I was doing. People told me all the time, "Oh, you're such a people pleaser." But I was like, "Okay, like I'm nice." Like what? Like
Yeah.
I did not understand. And going back to what you're saying about feeling empowered once you left that toxic situation,
Mhm.
oh man, can I relate to that?
Yeah.
Because he was the one that wanted the or stated, I want a divorce, and we
Yeah.
tried going to therapy and it just wasn't working and whatever, and then something happened and I was like, okay, that was the last straw on my account,
Yeah.
and I'm done.
Mhm.
And then I took the boys, we moved out, and and then we would call, and we were still in contact with each other. We would still talk to each other. And I remember sitting on the floor of my room just talking to him and being like, "Did we make the right decision? Like, do you want me to come back?" Like,
Yeah.
and he said, "No, we made the right decision." And I think that he could see something that I couldn't,
Okay.
in the sense that we didn't have a healthy relationship
Right.
and we were way better. I don't want to say necessarily friends because we don't hang out like friends do, but we were
Mhm.
way better apart than we were together. And I have friends that are divorced and have kids with their ex, and the stories that I hear them say, and it breaks my heart. And I've said this to my ex many times. I said I am so thankful for the relationship that we have because we're kind and we're nice to each other. We
Yeah,
respect
that's
each
good.
other. And the co-parenting thing is actually really, really easy with him. I
That's
have
good.
it really, really good in
Hmm.
that sense. But I am thankful that he could see that
Hmm.
where I couldn't. He could see the toxicness, I guess, if that's a word, of our relationship that I
Hmm.
couldn't. And then after being out of it for, I don't know, maybe 6 months to a year, I really started to see, oh my goodness. Like it's like the horse blinders came off. The the sunglasses at night came off and I could
Yeah.
actually see how it was not healthy.
Right. Because when you're right in the situation, you don't always see. It was a counselor telling me how toxic and like she mentioned the word emotional abuse, and I'm like, what?
Yeah.
It's just you're in it and you don't see it.
Yeah. And you don't want to see it
No,
either. I
that's
I
true.
I didn't want to
That's
see
true.
it. And then I started to see things after somebody else pointed it out.
Yeah.
Because yeah, when you're in it, it's so hard to see that. It's so hard to see it
Hmm.
when you're in it. So as a listener, if you're listening right now and maybe you're in this right now and you're questioning yourself whether you're making the right decision or not, and you feel overwhelmed and all of those feelings that come with going through a separation like this, it's hard and it's completely natural and normal to be
Yeah.
questioning yourself, because I know, because I came from that religious background, that you don't do that, you don't do that. Like
Yeah.
the expectation of your life is going to look like this.
Right.
You know,
Like
the
the
house.
white picket fence.
Exactly. Took the
Yeah.
words right out of my mouth. That white picket fence.
Yeah.
And then your world just crashes.
Yeah.
Did you suffer with any like mental health issues afterwards too?
I did anxiety. Anxiety was huge. And I
Oh.
dedicate a chapter in my book to that because struggled before I ended up confessing my struggle getting over my ex to the women at church. I was dealing with panic attacks, like like frequent panic attacks, and so um, yeah, clearly the body, I always say the body doesn't lie. When you're experiencing symptoms in your body like that, like there is a problem. It's telling you to take care of your health and um, face your pain. And that's another actual strategy is to face the pain. Don't run from it. I was running from it, and that's why eventually I had anxiety. It caught up to me. So that, and I learned that through divorce care, that you have to face the pain, to you have to go through it to grow through it. And that's something I've heard somewhere. I didn't make that up, but
Yeah, that's so true. I've mentioned that before in my episodes, that like I stuff it down. I
yeah,
in my survival mode, I think it was episode, I lived in survival mode for years,
yeah,
when, and not just related to my divorce. I can't put everything onto that, but
yeah,
a bunch of different things that were going on in my life, and I never processed anything. I never dealt with any of the pain because I didn't want to feel the pain, because if I let
yeah.
myself feel the pain, I had to recognize the
I
fact that
know.
all of those things happened to me in the first place. And it
Yeah.
was like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to, I don't, it was uncomfortable. I didn't, so I would just stuff it down. And
Yeah.
then I think it was my psychologist that told me that survival mode is a result of, or sorry, depression is a result of being in survival mode for too long.
Right. And I've also heard it said that depression can sometimes be anger towards turned inwards
Mm-hmm.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, 100%. I don't think that mine was necessarily anger at myself. It
Yeah.
was more but yes, I have for some people definitely that is really, really true because they don't want to get angry at the people around them, so they just take it out on themselves,
Yeah.
which isn't fair to you. And to go back to what you were saying about facing the pain,
Hmm.
it's I think that's when having your community, like you were saying, you had that community of people
Yeah.
and not to go through it alone.
Yeah.
One of the reasons why I wanted to make this podcast is because I feel like so many people feel alone.
Yeah.
And oh, I'm questioning my actions. What if this wasn't the right decision? Well, if you're in a toxic relationship and the relationship isn't healthy and it's
Yeah.
not benefiting you and
Mm-mm.
helping you grow as a person, then yeah, you are making the right decision and you're not alone.
Right. And something I found, I mean, because it can be hard or scary to go to like a divorce recovery group or like divorce care is what I attended. And you can just go to if your listeners are interested, they can just go to divorcecare.org or griefshare.org. That's another one, another support group organization. But it can be kind of like, oh boy, I feel embarrassed or shameful. I don't want to go to a group like that. I want to be anonymous or whatever. But I've recently come across, and it's not the same as in-person support, but it's better than nothing. There are Facebook groups that are just for people that are divorced. So that's another form of support that again, it's not as good as in person, but it's still better than nothing. When after my divorce, I completely got rid of Facebook because like you were talking about the people you had in common with your ex, like my ex and I had church friends in common, other people in common, and I didn't want anything to do with my in-laws. I couldn't take it. um,
Yeah.
and so I just got rid of Facebook altogether. But now I kind of wish I hadn't been so extreme. Maybe I should have just blocked those particular people and not checked it as much, but I'm kind of an all or nothing person.
Yeah.
Because now I see there would have been benefit because there are groups like for divorce on Facebook.
Oh, 100. I'm a very black and white person too.
Yeah.
That gray is very hard for me. It's like, oh, yeah, yeah. I get it. I even went back to my maiden name and just
Yeah.
I couldn't do it. I couldn't,
Yeah.
yeah, I couldn't. It was just too painful for me to do that. And
Right.
it comes from a very big family, so it was hard,
Yeah.
because we were quite close with quite a few of his brothers and sisters, and but it just I needed for myself to just move on. And I
Yeah.
felt like that was a part of my past, and I just wanted to move on
Right.
and not get stuck there because then if I talk to them or brothers and sisters, they mimic and they're so alike. And then I would miss him. And
Yes.
it would just bring up all of those other emotions again. And it was just like, no, I have to take care of me
Yeah.
and just start fresh again and start new. I think we have this stigma of it being, oh, well, if you get divorced, that means you failed at something, that you're
Right.
a failure.
But that's not always the case.
No, no.
No. That's actually probably a quite a damaging belief. Say, oh, I failed. It takes two people to make a marriage work. Like maybe,
Mhm.
um, I'm sure both. Like I wasn't perfect in my relationship either. There were things I could have done better, but it's not my fault. And my ex actually said that I got the brunt of the bad behavior. It's shocking that he would even admit that, but just go, but it takes two people. And in my second divorce recovery book, which I am actually updating, so I wouldn't recommend getting that copy yet.
Okay.
But I talk about guilt after divorce. And there's actually false guilt, because you can only be truly guilty for something you did. You can't take on the other person's, you know,
Bad
if
behavior.
they did something, yeah, if they did something, it's not your fault. I did that. I was like, his affairs are my fault. I must have deserved it or something. So I had, which is silly, I know. Took me a long time to not realize that, but yeah, there's such a thing as false guilt after divorce, and that actually might be very encouraging to some people, because
Oh,
they might be taking on the guilt of the ex.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
100%. 100%.
yeah,
And yeah, I have a history of people blaming me for their shortcomings.
yes,
And I believed it. I was
yeah,
told it for
I hear
years
you.
and years and years. And it's just like, you get told something over and over again, then you start to believe it. And no, no, you're responsible for you. And yes,
Yeah.
could I have been better in my previous marriage? Oh, yeah, 100%. Like there's so many things. There's just so
Mhm.
many, right? I nobody's perfect, but looking at the relationship that I have now with Roy,
Mhm.
and we just celebrated 8 years in January.
Okay, congrats.
And it's just like you were saying, I think before we hit record,
Mhm.
was it's night and day.
It is night and day different now.
Night and day.
Yeah,
And
like this
so,
is, you realize what you always deserved, because no one deserves
yeah,
marriage.
yeah. And I don't want to say that we never fight or we never
No,
have our moments, but
yeah,
it's instead of, well, and we were older too when we got together. So I'm sure like just the maturity level was
yes,
huge.
it makes a difference.
Right. Me and my ex are from two different countries. He's from Eastern Europe, I'm from
Oh yeah,
Canada. So the whole culture thing was very, very hard for me over there, which
yeah,
threw another wrench into our bucket, right?
true.
But now it's like when we get into a fight, it's more how do we fix the problem as
Yeah,
opposed to, I don't want to say picking on the other person, but for lack of better words, picking
yeah,
at the other person.
yeah.
Right? And yeah. So it's yeah, that night and day. And then
I know.
after I did started dating after my divorce, I was so picky. And I met Roy online actually. So I would
So
go,
I met mine online
yeah,
too.
it works really well, doesn't it?
It
Because you
can, yeah,
go
for sure.
through their profile and you can be like, okay, he likes, for me and Roy, he likes hiking, he likes
Yeah.
camping, he likes doing these things. We have these things in common.
Mhm.
And then he messaged me and I wrote him like a blurb, like really long blurb, being like,
Mhm.
hey, I'm a single mother. This is what I'm going through. Yada, 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 yada.
Mhm.
Told him a bunch of stuff about me. I said, take it or leave it. And I
Yeah,
honestly did not expect to hear a reply back.
right.
And he replied back. I was like, oh, so he's okay
Yeah,
with all that stuff. Okay.
yeah. And I actually have another book on dating. And it can be for someone who's dating, after divorce, or someone who's dating as a younger, it's geared towards women. So a younger woman or someone dating after divorce, it basically cannot make those mistakes that I made.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Which is awesome.
Yeah. Like the title of the book is Stop Settling When It Comes to Love.
Okay. Yeah. I see
Yeah,
it on here.
yeah. I definitely settled the first time around. And I really believe a lot of that was I didn't have a lot of self-respect back then. After that, not so good marriage, and having the confidence somehow to say no, I can't do this anymore. That my confidence actually skyrocketed. Eventually, I mean, it was a progress, but it's now I'm now more confident than I've ever been. Sometimes you can look at divorce as like a new start. I mean, you might not see it like that right away, but it can actually be a new start. It can be a turning point where you become the person you were meant to be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that everybody that's listening, I want to reiterate what she just
Mhm.
said because that's really key, I think.
Mhm.
That you can look at this as not your end.
No.
It's not your end at all. It's your new start. And it doesn't matter if you're 25 like I was,
Yeah.
or if you're
40 like I
65
was.
or
Yeah.
40 like you. Like I know
Yeah.
people that it's so toxic and it's like, why are you torturing yourself? Like
Yeah.
I don't understand. But yeah, I think that self-respect is really key too that you mentioned
I
because
do.
and learning to love yourself, which as a people pleaser, I
Hmm.
was not. I didn't really have any of that self-respect
Yeah.
and self-love. And until I got out of the situation, hindsight's 2020,
Hmm.
to see that, oh, yeah, that wasn't very good. And being single for a while because I was single for a good 2 years and I
Hmm.
had, especially towards men, no trust. There was just no, I couldn't trust. That just the trust was broken. It was gone.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. It's kind of good to hear, like, for you, it was 2 years after divorce. For me, it was 9 years.
Hmm.
It took me 9 years to date again. I mean, I did talk to men online, but I wasn't ready to date. I was just lonely and
Hmm.
I shouldn't have done. I don't recommend that, by the way. But I didn't actually date, and my husband is the first person I actually dated. I talked to a few men thinking it might work out into something, and they were no good. So, but yeah, 9 years. So that just shows you that it's different for every person. Like, don't put pressure on yourself to say, "Oh, I have to be dating again at a certain amount of time." You don't. Maybe you don't even want to date again, but just take your time, and it's good to give yourself space like the both of us did.
Yeah, and just reiterating that it's healthy to be single for a little while
It is. Yeah.
and learning things about yourself and finding out who you are
Yeah.
without that other person. Because like
Right.
I got married. Well, I met him straight right in college, like right after grade 12.
Okay.
Never dated in high school. I was just too focused on school to think about any of that stuff.
Mhm.
And then I went to college and that's where I met my ex and then it just we dated for 2 years, then we got married and I was married by 19 or 20.
Wow.
I was married by 20.
Yeah.
So I really didn't have any experience of being single and finding out who I was outside of my parents' home,
Yeah.
and being on my own
Right.
until after that divorce. And I really found out a lot about myself that
Yep.
I was worthy of love, that I was worthy of a much higher standard
Yes.
and
Yeah, I hear you.
raised the bar a little bit.
Yep. Yep. And my divorce, sorry, in the dating book, I actually talk about a method that I used, how to raise the bar and how to keep it raised. Because I've heard other people do it. You make a list of all the traits you want in a future mate, future husband or wife.
Yeah.
And you also include a list of negotiables, non-negotiables. I had a list of 50 items or over 50. And my current husband, he met like he didn't meet everything, but he met over 50 of my items and plus bonus ones I never even thought to include. It's a good way to measure. Again, you don't necessarily get everything you want. You don't always get everything you want in life anyway. So, the person might be a little different from what you expected, but at least that gives you a target to, like, yeah, if he's a heavy drinker, heavy smoker, heavy gambler, no. you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, yeah. And if it takes 2 years or 9 years,
Yeah.
it doesn't
That-
matter because in that time you're growing and you're
mhm.
learning to love yourself.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with being single. Like
No.
exactly. Like it's good to understand yourself and figure out exactly what you want.
Yeah. There's no need to settle when it comes to love.
No,
No,
you're better off not. You're just
no.
because when I started dating after, and I did everything online because I had two young boys, and I just
Yeah.
like, I don't have time to go out. Like,
Yeah. Right.
I go to work and I go home, and
Yeah.
the online thing worked really well for me because I was so picky at
Hmm.
who I would even reply to, because you
Yeah.
could go to their profile and you can read all the things
Yeah.
and be like, oh, well, he really likes um I don't know, a
Mm.
boating and bowling and I don't know, something that I'm not even interested in. It's like,
Yeah.
well, then what are we going to have in common? And I think that's really key too, to have
Yeah.
that, at least one thing, at least something,
At
a
least,
couple
yeah.
things.
Because you can't build a relationship on romance alone. You need a friendship too. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really key.
Yeah. Shared interests is a big part of that.
And being best friends, really. Like me
Yeah.
and Roy we do everything together.
Yeah.
I I have no, like, I mentioned this in other episodes, that he's really into fixing vehicles and things like that.
Hmm.
And yeah, it saves us a bunch of money because then we don't have to
Good.
pay the
Yeah.
mechanic. It's something that we can do together. And would I be interested in doing it if I wasn't with him? Probably not,
Yeah.
because I would just have no idea. My mind is not built that way to understand how a motor works. I'm learning things as I go, but we find little things because that's so time consuming for him.
Hmm.
Even if I don't work on the vehicle with him, I'll bring a book because I'm an avid reader. I'll bring a book out and sit in the shop and read,
Yeah.
just hang out and just be
That's
with
cool.
my buddy because he's my best friend.
Yeah. It's the best kind of marriage to have, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the same with us.
Oh, that's so awesome. That's so
Yeah.
awesome. Wow. So, what's the difference between, because you're two divorce books,
Mhm.
what's the difference between the two of them?
Well, the first one does talk about specific strategies for healing, whereas the second one goes into the deeper issues of recovery. I call them speed bumps. So things like guilt, loneliness, rebound relationships, shame, denial, acceptance. Like it goes into the deeper issues of recovery,
Oh, okay.
more so than the first one did.
Right. Yeah. And there's, because I'm looking, it's like a sign of a speed bump. And it's like, it's so
Yeah.
true. There's
Yeah.
so many things that I had to deal with myself to fix myself when I was single. So
Yeah.
if you jump into a relationship right away after you get divorced, I feel like you don't give yourself time to really properly heal.
Mm-mm.
And then you bring all of that baggage right into your next relationship.
Yeah. Yeah. And you might not even give yourself time to like, oh, well, what did I do wrong? And if I did, and if I don't, then I'll just repeat the same mistake.
Mm-hmm. Right on,
Yeah.
right on. Well, was there anything else that you wanted to add?
Well, I guess I can mention my other two books. I have a poetry book and a Bible study book. So if you're looking for something more faith-based, then I have those two books as well. The Bible study book puts a creative spin on Bible study. So it's not your average Bible study. And the poetry book it really charts my own struggle with doubts, from doubt to assurance, I guess you could say. So
Oh, wow. That's
yeah,
really cool.
yeah.
And you're breaking free from toxicity.
So that is mostly geared towards friendships, but it could really be towards any kind of toxic relationship, dating or friendship, but it's more geared towards friendship. It's like an evaluation guide. I talk about what a good relationship or friendship is like. I give examples of toxic traits and a bunch of questions you can ask, can answer them, and it helps you examine where your relationship is at. You wouldn't need that book if you're sure you have healthy relationships, but if there's little nagging doubts that, is my relationship good, then that book might help you. determine if it is or not.
So I
Mhm.
guess if you're looking at a friendship and you feel like it's maybe a little bit one-sided,
Yeah.
be a really good book to grab.
Yes.
Or
Yeah,
if
when
you're being told that you're a people pleaser, maybe like I was,
right, right,
maybe go swipe that one up
right,
because
right.
it's once you break free from that, the picture that she has on the cover of that book is a woman that's like jumping up and it looks like is that barbed wire?
I think so.
That some
Yeah.
like and she's like breaking free of the
Yeah.
chains or the barbed wire or whatever.
Yeah.
I can't really tell. It's really small. And
Mm.
that's such a great illustration
It
because
is.
once you break free from like I'm not a people pleaser now, but
Yeah.
once you break free of that, it is so free. I think
Yeah.
that cover is just so it's just spot on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got all my covers done through a company called Get Covers. So if any of your listeners are want to write a book and self-publish it, Get Covers does covers for $35 US. And they do a good job. So it's very hard to get covers like that.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that thank you so much, Jenny,
Yeah.
for
Thank
taking
you.
time out of your day and sharing all your books and the knowledge that you have and just a brief wrap up of the episode is just you're not alone. You're not
Mhm.
alone if you're going through this, if you're questioning, if you're feeling isolated because you had so many common friends together with your ex and you don't know how to move forward and just a reminder to face that pain. Don't just stuff it down like I did because it's not
Mhm.
yeah,
I
don't
did
do
I did it too.
that. I don't
Yeah.
recommend it.
No.
And you're not a failure. You
No.
know, you are worthy of respect, you are worthy of love,
Yeah.
you're worthy of the best. And both Jenny and I are here for you. I'll put Jenny on my website. So if you go to my website, you will scroll down for my co-host. You will see her there. I'll put a link to her website in the show notes. And do go check out her books because they look absolutely amazing. I know I am going to. So thank you so much again,
Thank
Jenny,
you. Thank you.
for taking time out of your day to
Yeah.
be with us.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
All right. Take care.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
And that's a wrap for this episode. Thank you for listening all the way to the very end. Aw, you're the best. My website is classicchronicles.ca. If you want to head on over there, I have my co-hosts all listed there. If you click on their photos, it'll take you directly to their website. Go say hi to them. They would love to hear from you. Podcasters love hearing from their listeners. So go say hi. Don't be shy. And if you want to as well, there is a buy me a coffee link on there, which all the proceeds I use to just pour right back into my podcast. It does cost me just a little bit to have this podcast going, and I would love to be able to support it instead of taking it out of my own pocket and maybe, take the kids for an ice cream because they don't like coffee. I love coffee though. So, all right. You guys take care and we'll see you next week. Bye.